Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. How are you all doing today? I found myself in a nostalgic kind of mood, thinking about the journey that we've all been on in technology. For me, from the ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64 to Windows machines, picking up a magazine, and AOL and Netscape Navigator CDs fell out onto the floor, to logging onto the internet for the first time via a US robotics modem, and that soft, sweet sound of a connection, before building a web presence using something like GeoCities. But of course, all that is confined to the history books now, and every business is challenged with enhancing everyone's digital experience by providing new, innovative and versatile solutions. And all that is a mission that today's guest is passionate about. And his name is Karim Marucchi, CEO of a company called CrowdFavorite, which is a global firm specialising in digital strategy and web development for huge companies such as Starz, Lexus and National Geographic, to name but a few. And as for today's guest, Kareem, he has more than 20 years experience in specialising in enterprise-grade digital strategies and has also taken many companies public, not to mention managing merger and acquisitions too. But today, I want to learn more about how CrowdFavorite has elevated enterprises' website experiences and also helping accelerate enterprises' digital transformation, not to mention optimization for the new Google update and what that means for enterprises. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Atlanta, where Kareem is waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Neil. It's Karim Marucchi, and I have the pleasure of today running CrowdFavorite. I was originally born in Rome, Italy, and grew up literally traveling around the world because my father was an architect engineer on large projects. So I sort of ended up traveling and doing all sorts of fun things, went to architectural school, and then I had the distinct pleasure of being in the right place at the right time when a friend of mine was going to start a dial-in service in '94, which he was late for. And that turned into one of Los Angeles's first web consulting shops, building websites for clients.
I was going to say, that's incredibly cool, because one of the things that people often ask me with whatever 1,500 interviews on here is, when you speak to all these tech leaders, is there anything that any of them have got in common with each other? And I think for the most part, it's serendipity, those happy accidents in life that put you in the right place and at the right time. But you also need to be open to that at the same time, don't you?
Absolutely. And I instantly loved the experience of building websites. It was back from how I built, as studying architecture. And one thing led to another. And today at CrowdFavorite, I'm happy to say we built some very unique website experiences for some of our clients.
And you're making those unique websites now, but did it all start with GeoCities? Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Well, as I'm sure you remember, it started all with the AOL web crawler as the first search engine and trying to figure out how to make sites more findable.
Oh, remember those days well. And just listening to your background there, growing up in Rome, architecture school, and you've gone on to have 20 years of experience in specialising in enterprise-grade digital strategy, and you also taken many companies public and managed merger and acquisitions. I'm curious, where was it that your love of technology came from? Can you remember the spark? Was it just that day where that happy accident happened, or was it way before then?
No, it was in university. I went to architectural university in Rome, and it was at the dawn of moving from manual drafting to CAD in the early 90s. And CAD was still on DOS, so you literally had to put in your coordinates. And I loved writing scripts. I loved the technology. I loved playing with AutoCAD. And one thing led to another. And I found myself graduating as an architect with an offer to work with Autodesk because of just how much technology I was putting into the sort of the space at the time. I had getting small articles published on these little scripts I was writing for AutoCAD. And I loved going around with the AutoCAD team talking about what's next, what's coming up in the next versions of AutoCAD. And that's what really got me into technology, was trying to figure out what's next. And the internet was just, as you know, coming to a flourish. 93, 94 was like the moment, right?
Man, and just listening to your conversation, just listening to you talk about that there, I'm getting flashbacks from my IT days, in my support days, where someone would say, Neil, can you get me the Autodesk 3? I think it was license. Oh, God, yeah, getting flashbacks there. But here in 21, though, you are the CEO at Crowd Favorite, which is a global firm that specializes in digital strategy and web development for some huge companies such as Starz, Lexus, National Geographic, and such a long list of prestigious customers. But can you tell me more about the kind of problems that you set out to solve for your clients, and ultimately what makes you different and stand out from other solutions out there?
Yeah, so I was very lucky in the very beginning. The first web shop that we opened really started working with enterprise clients on day one. So this last 20 years really has been all about mostly enterprise clients. In fact, the one time I tried to work with small, medium businesses, I got burned. I don't know how to deal with small and medium businesses. But in that enterprise space, as you remember as well, there was this moment where it was all about the integration companies, where they were integrating different back-end systems for these enterprise clients. And then like the website was something almost a third party that you integrated into, maybe way back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And what really caught my attention was when Linux, Red Hat, and IBM started working together, and IBM said, we're going to support Red Hat in the enterprise. And at the time, I was working with all these proprietary content management systems for clients and all that kind of fun stuff. And it really drove an interest. But for years, I couldn't do anything about it. Then about 10 years ago, I wanted to look into open source seriously as a content management system. I was in between different companies and saying, all right, what do I want to do next? And I wanted to double down and say, how can we bring open source in the web to the enterprise, like we brought open source to the server environment in the enterprise with Red Hat and the IBM partnership? And I looked at the content management systems that were out there, and I just saw how this one particular content management system, WordPress, was so easy to use and so easy to implement. Everybody thought it was just a blog, but it was so easy to get into first using it and into really modifying it that I said, well, let's see if there's a future there. And one thing led to another, had a few interesting conversations. And my company ended up helping the Walt Disney Corporation architect their move from a completely proprietary content management system that was called Go Publish in the late 90s and early 2000s. And they wanted to embrace open source. They wanted to create a 10-year plan. And they've made the decision to go with WordPress. So we helped them architect a strategy to move to open source. Now, very quickly in the enterprise, it is true that things like WordPress don't scale extremely well for the enterprise back then. So we had to figure out how to help scale it. And the companies, I wasn't at Crowd Favorite at the time. I was at my own company, Vela Media. Alex King, who founded Crowd Favorite, who was the first person to really scale WordPress for some of the major publishers on the East Coast of the United States, and all things digital and all those wonderful platforms there. And we got together and started talking about how to truly scale. And in 2013, 2014, we merged our companies. And today, what we try to do, really putting aside all the buzzwords, we're trying to solve business problems with more simple technology. I mean, I know you remember when the MarTech stack wasn't 8,000, right?
Yeah.
How do clients make that decision?
So true.
We have clients come to us and say, do we want to just use Adobe Experience Manager and just do everything there? Or do we look at the MarTech stack? Do we look at open source? So I've tried to make Crowd Favorite a place where we go to the client and we say, let's take a look at what your needs are. Let's not take a look at the technology first. And how do we take advantage of that?
Couldn't agree more. And I think it was last year that Microsoft had actually said that they'd gone through 2 years of digital transformation inside 2 months. And I think since then, I think everybody's kind of learned that a digital transformation is not it's not a destination, it's a journey, and it's a continuous journey. And I'm curious, for business leaders who want to stay ahead of the curve, are there any digital transformation trends that they should be looking at, or anything that's caught your eye?
Yeah, I mean, I love how you approach things when you're saying, let's put aside all these buzzwords and all these 25-cent words, because digital transformation is important, especially with the year that we've all gone through recently. But it's something that we've been walking to from the late 90s, especially in the enterprise space. There's nothing new here. It's just the fact that we now aren't thinking any longer about our e-commerce, customer service, and marketing as 3 different things. We have to bring those things together. And since COVID came along, the most cutting-edge companies were already thinking this way, but now everybody's going, okay, there is no difference between e-commerce and in-store or retail. We have to bring those things together and treat it as a customer experience. So the other big buzzword has been the 360 customer experience, right? I'm sure you've been talking about that as well on your podcast. And the 360 customer experience is about that digital transformation. Going back to, again, using words back from the 90s, being able to be a systems integrator and integrating all these different bespoke systems in a way that the end customer, our customer's customer, can have a better relationship with the brand or the company is what this is about. It's no longer about let's build a marketing website or let's put up an e-commerce website. How do we integrate those experiences? There's a lot, we're going to talk about privacy and data and all those fun things, but before you get to watching for your own privacy, how do you make that experience better, right? And that's where we need to focus. It's not thinking of these things as different pieces, but how do we bring them together?
And a topic that I'd love to chat with you about today is I get around 50 pitches to come on the podcast every week. And a lot of people say, well, how do you choose which to go for and which to turn down? Well, there's one example that I had this morning that I wanted to share with you from a fraud company, fraud and cybersecurity. And they sent a link to their website, and that website was insecure. It wasn't a HTTPS. So there's a big unsecure sign on a fraud website, which I thought was quite ironic. But there's so many companies out there that don't have their site optimized for Google. And I know this is a subject close to your heart. So can you tell me more about how organization for the new Google update that's coming and what that will mean for enterprises? Because we really do need to get better at being ahead of that, don't we?
Absolutely. So there's, as much as we've all known the best practices for years, when we talk about image optimization, content, and speaking to audiences, not search engines when you're writing, and all those wonderful things, it's surprising how people have that list and know that list, and yet day to day they don't do it.
Yeah.
The number of clients who come to us who are supposed to be best in their field and still haven't thought of mobile first, who still haven't thought of quite literally stopping to create landing pages that are just for a campaign and create landing pages that are specifically the questions that somebody might ask is amazing. So if there's one thing I can say out there to leaders who are thinking about this, it's please look at the best practices that everybody's been talking about, realize that the change that's coming to Google is that they're actually just starting to lock down these rules, and they're going to make it absolutely mandatory. That's the 101. If you want to get into more advanced topics of what they're doing with the search meta and all these wonderful technical topics, it's no longer a point where somebody who can just market can think about content. You do need somebody who's more technical to tell you how your code is put together, because the code matters. Google cares now whether you have all these scripts coming in from all these different places that are slowing down your site. Or if you're using a slow theme or a theme that isn't well coded, it's going to shave a lot of points off of your Google score, and that's going to bring you down. So there's a lot of common sense things you could do out there, and there's links all over the place, including our own website. But more importantly, it's talk to a technical expert. More than ever, there's a difference between content SEO strategy and technical SEO strategy. And people forget that. And now Google is going to start cracking down.
And another subject I'd love to explore with you, it's very important to enterprises of all sizes, is open source software. Is there anything tech leaders and business leaders need to know about open source software this year, would you say?
A lot of people who are just looking into this quickly get pulled because of content in the internet into the subject of whether I can either go open source or I can go SaaS or something that's licensed. It's like either or. It's not true. You don't have to choose. The simplest way I can explain it to folks who are new to this concept is think of open source as a hub that can connect to all the SaaS or licensed or the best of that MarTech 8000 companies out there that are all doing very interesting things with all the different specialties you want to do. Think of the open source as a great place to have a hub. If you have the hub of your website on an open source platform, whether it's WordPress or Drupal or one of the other open source platforms, and then you can connect out to SaaS or other licensed products, you can do the one thing that terrifies them and keeps them giving you the best customer service. You can switch. You don't like somebody's platform for product A, you can go to product B because you control your own hub. If you're on a hub, you're on an all-in-one solution, you are stuck to the speed of their own innovation. That's the beginning argument. And then there's a more advanced argument for folks who want to talk about ROI or speed to market. But if that's the beginning of your conversation, look into how open source can keep your options open longer term.
And I think another hot topic at the moment is data collection, because users and consumers are getting increasingly aware of how their data is being used. And on the flip side of that, we also have increasing conversations around the splinternet and almost digital borders being put up, and countries and governments are starting to question how their citizens' data is used overseas. So what do you think the future holds for data collection and the benefits of WordPress, and also the role of open source software with that this year?
Again, I love looking at history. It's always been a fact of legislation, and the way people are worrying about things usually have to do with what's happened in the past. And there's been a lot of abuses in the past with data mining and oversharing and selling users' data. On the other hand, we have Generation Z, and they demand that when they go to a website, that the website offer them what they want. They are willing to share their data. The difference is they want to control what they're sharing. They want the website to know that their favorite color is red. They want their website to know that they're geolocated where they will deliver to them. What they don't want to do is be tracked to other websites. So I think what we're going to be seeing is more options of being able to go to your favorite retailer and give them more data so that you have even a more personalized experience. If that retailer, if that brand can create a trustful relationship, that they're not going to give that data to anybody else. That's the bottom business line. I'm going to stay out of the technology conversation, right? Yeah. Because the technology is the tool in which we use it.
And just to bring to life some of the things that we're talking about today, and also some of the great work you're doing with some of the world's biggest brands, just to bring that to life, do you have any use cases of how Crowd Favorite has elevated enterprises' website experiences for each visitor and also helped accelerate enterprises' digital transformation too? It'll be great to put a story to that if you've got any that you spring to mind.
Absolutely. A first short one would be for Lexus, the car manufacturer. Yeah. They had many different systems for speaking with existing customers about the needs of maintenance on their cars or worst case scenario recalls. And they said, we have all these bespoke systems. And on top of that, we also have corporate dealerships and the need of the warehouse to send parts to the dealerships. And those are separate systems. So we were able to use open source as this hub idea to be able to reach out and connect through APIs and other systems to bring together an experience. And the end result was that a customer could go to one website on Lexus, put in their VIN number, and once they put in their VIN number, they would automatically, through this one interface, be speaking to the parts warehouse, the local dealer for appointments, and seeing which things were covered under warranty so they could make an appointment, get the parts fast-tracked, like in the old days we talked about just-in-time shipping, just like that, get the parts fast-tracked to the dealership and get everything centered so that by the time they get to the dealership, everything's happening. So you're dealing with multiple companies, multiple systems, and we were able to bring that together with what most people think of as a blog. The center of the system was actually a WordPress site. So that's one quick sort of Lexus example. And on the other side, for a higher education company that helps bring, for universities, they outreach to students. They had 40 or 50 websites they needed to put up every semester and recruiting season for different websites. And they had these giant systems where they had to quickly create websites with a no-code or low-code solution. And we were able to come and create a bespoke no-code solution for them that quite literally let their marketing teams choose between 10 different template sites to quickly, within hours, not days or weeks, put up campaign sites as clients needed them, as the universities needed them, and then match them to the branding of the actual university.
Incredibly cool. And it feels that so much about the web is changing right now. As you said a few moments about Google and their new requirements and how they give websites more Google juice and who doesn't. And then also there's a lot of debate around the death of the cookie and how that will impact websites. So what excites you about the future and the role that Crowd Favorite will play in the future of the web too?
So we are doubling down on the integration of open source with the MarTech 8000, with other SaaS systems. We don't feel like there's one company out there it's possible for them to create a one system for it all, right? We're really excited about working with those companies. We're really excited about really the way that, notwithstanding what we're talking about with Splinternet and other things, it's no longer about just being local. You can have your brand across the world. You can be across borders, and you need to be able to support those things. I'm sure there's going to be all sorts of things coming up with how we are going to get divided in this world. But more importantly, the internet is a place where companies and leaders can use it to reach out. We're excited for that. And frankly, I'm really excited to see what's happening in Africa, in parts of Asia that we don't think of usually, Upper Asia, literally Kazakhstan and other places. These are places that are coming online with a giant rollout. And I can't wait to see what those companies are doing. I'd like to partner with those companies. So if your listeners out there are from areas that aren't traditionally internet powerhouses that we traditionally think of, and you're doing something interesting on the internet, reach out. We want to talk to you. We're excited to see what different global localization aspects feel and are doing and can bring to the open source world and really to the internet software world.
And for any of those people listening that could be on their bus to work, out for a jog, walking their dog, or doing the household chores, whatever it is they're doing, wherever they are in the world, what is the best way of them finding Crowd Favorite online and equally contacting your team if they do have any questions or anything they'd like to share with you?
Absolutely. Please come to crowdfavorite.com. Come check us out, see what we're doing, see what we're up to, get in touch. I can be reached at on Twitter at Karim Marucchi, or Marucchi.com is my website. And reach out. Let's have a chat.
Well, there's so much I've loved about our conversation today. Yes, talking about here and now and the optimization for the new Google update and what that means for enterprises, and also bringing to life the kind of work that you're doing there and website and how you're improving website experiences for visitors and helping accelerate enterprises' digital transformation. But equally, I've got a nagging feeling inside of me that we could also have another podcast episode where we were talking about the early days of the internet, US robotics, modems, Alta Vista, GeoCities. I think that's an episode waiting to happen. But more than anything, just thank you for joining me today.
I'd love to, Neil. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.
There's just so much I loved about chatting with Kareem today. The digital transformation trends that enterprises must be following closely this year, and also what the future holds for data collection, the benefits of WordPress, and the role of open software. And the role of open source software. But more than anything, for me, it was just that Kareem was a great guy that I could just sit down with and share a beer and talk about tech stories. And I genuinely hope to meet him in person one day. So Kareem, if you are listening, you are officially added to my cool guests I'd like to share a beer with. But over to everyone listening, how have you seen the web evolve, and how are you preparing for the future of the web? I'd love to hear your stories and experiences there. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So a big thank you for taking a walk down memory lane with me today and also exploring the future of the web. But I'll speak with you all again tomorrow. So thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.